have been practicing criminal law and since '82 constitutional law in the Fraser Valley in Abbotsford, which I hear is the murder capital and maybe the gang capital of Canada. That's what the media says anyway. I haven't found myself walking around Abbotsford over the last 30-odd years to be any problem whatsoever. But the gangs and the things that have been happening could be attributed to drug prohibition. And I would adopt everything that Mr. Jones told you earlier, and also what Mr. Bratzer told you, coming from a police officer. My practice in the Valley, as you probably all know, I'm surrounded by federal and provincial prisons. Not as many provincial prisons as there used to be. I think they gutted them, and more people now end up in the federal system than ever before. So I appear in the criminal courts throughout the Valley and in Vancouver, but I also appear before the National Parole Board. I used to appear before the BC Board of Parole before they abolished it, causing all kinds of additional problems in relation to conditional release, certainly in relation to provincial prisoners. So I did try to send something to you, but apparently it was too big and it bounced back. So I'm fortunate that you don't have anything in front of you so as to pick on a particular part that I might have said. So the first thing that I had sent to you was a curriculum vitae so that you would know what my experience is. I did chair a committee on corrections and institutions for the BC branch of the bar way back in, I think it was '83 or something. I was chair of a task force on imprisonment and release, which became a committee on imprisonment and release for the Canadian Bar Association for many years. And in that capacity, I appeared before many parliamentary committees and Senate committees back in the 80s and early 90s. And many of these same issues were brought up then. So consistent with my family Irish motto, history cannot be denied, I thought I should send to you much of the work that was done before by earlier parliamentary committees and Senate committees that dealt with this issue. And I'm surprised at some of the questions I've heard while sitting here that many of you maybe haven't seen some of these materials before. But I've included the Sentencing Commission, for example, Archambault. I don't know if you knew that Archambault not only wrote about sentencing generally, but also mandatory minimum sentences. There's a whole chapter on mandatory minimum sentences, and it actually points out that every Royal Commission in the previous 35 years opposed mandatory minimum sentences. We're another 22 years or something since that report of the Sentencing Commission. So I haven't seen anything that supports mandatory minimum sentences being an effective penal tool in terms of addressing it. And this whole time that I've been practicing, I have to agree with what other witnesses have said. I've just got busier and busier and busier with this prohibitionist type of an approach. And so no matter what you do, from an economic point of view, this will benefit me and other lawyers. You will make us busier and busier, and as I think a member of the Reform Party said to me years ago when I appeared, he said if he had his druthers, they would make alcohol illegal again too. And so I told him that if he did that, he would make me very rich, and I would look forward to the day when he did that. Now, the reason I say that is because, in my view, what's going on here is all perception, none of it's reality, and there's all sorts of things that have been written about this. And one of the better ones is an article funded by Health Canada, by the Canadian Centre for Substance Abuse, called Comparing the Perceived Seriousness and Actual Costs of Substance Abuse. And I've sent that, or I will resend that so that you have the benefit of that. I urge you to read this particular article as well as the chapter from the Sentencing Commission on public knowledge of sentencing. And the reason for that, of course, is because I hear that it's believed that by doing this, people will get a message, people will be deterred, people will stop dealing, and so on. And And the Sentencing Commission stuff from back in '87 points out that most people don't have a clue what you're doing. Most of them get their information from the media. The media inevitably, because of what it is, reports unusual and exceptional cases, not routine, mundane cases, which we deal with on a daily basis in the criminal courts. And so the public builds its view of criminal justice on unusual and exceptional cases. The whole foundation for its view is distorted and doesn't deal with ordinary everyday cases. And so they lobby their politicians, and the politicians, concerned about votes, scurry to pass these types of bills. It seems that without much consultation before they put the bill forward at the outset, a lot of consultation happens afterwards so that it can be said that everybody has been consulted before passing the bill. If you look, if I can take you quickly to a quote from the Health Canada or Canadian Substance Abuse document comparing perceived seriousness. There's some nice graphs, and it talks about how we amplify our perspectives on illicit drugs because many of us aren't familiar with them, aren't in control of them, they're distant from us, and we attenuate our knowledge in terms of the drugs we are familiar with, like alcohol. And so the graphs here first show perceived seriousness of substance abuse in Canada, and as you might expect, it shows alcohol way down here, illicit drugs about the middle, and injection drug use way up at the top, and it shows that's consistent Canada-wide, province-wide, and city-wide. And the further away it is, it seems, the more concerned people are about the drug use. Then if you look at the direct social costs of alcohol, illicit drugs, and cannabis in Canada, and this was, again, all government-funded and done by experts, you'll see that the graph in terms of alcohol is almost through the roof, that the graph in terms of illicit drugs is substantially lower, and that when you look at marijuana, it's almost, you can hardly see it on the scale in terms of healthcare costs, enforcement costs, and so on. So the findings, if I can give them to you, total direct social costs associated with alcohol, 7.4 million, more than double those for all illicit drugs combined. Direct alcohol-related healthcare costs, 3.3 million, nearly 3 times as high as for all illicit drugs excluding cannabis, over 45 times higher than the direct healthcare costs of cannabis and the annual direct costs of healthcare, and 31 times higher than the annual direct costs of enforcement, which is about 5.4 million, 36 times higher than the annual cost of prevention and research. So most of the money that you're putting there is into enforcement, and I haven't seen much change in my practice as a result of this particular approach.